You're here to study Bridgman. This is recording 6 on memory and metaphor from our 12-session 2020 summer bootcamp. Updates at marshallart.com. I want you to see that here we are, me in Southern California, and you, where are you? I'd like you to think. Imagine right now the whole planet laid out before you, and you say, there I am. And then think about the fact that you are connected with over 200 people to like this. Look at that. Now, the size of the glowing aqua circles is dependent on how many people are in those time zones. Now, I'm sorry with Australia that we didn't distinguish between Perth and Sydney, and there's a number of little issues here, but it's sort of an average. It's not a statistical map. It's not saying, oh, you made that circle 20% bigger than the other one, and it wasn't the case. This is a map of emotional inspiration to know that while you were there in front of your computer, if you could get back up over the globe and see the whole thing unfolded before you, this is how many people are connected to learn about figure drawing from George Bridgman. Let's see, yesterday we spent more time on the right angle study than you might have thought we were going to, but it was scratching an itch, and a number of you seemed appreciative of it. But somebody pointed out, hey, if you do a top-down view, if you look straight down on it, and then you figure, if I was over here on this side, I would see that at my right and that at my left. That's really useful. So I got to thinking, why not do that for my students? They're hardworking. What if we were to look straight down on this DAS 3D poser model based on a MyBridge position? And if I were down here looking at this model, let's say about eye level, about in the middle of the figure. I'm not looking dramatically up or dramatically down. Well, it would make sense. This is easy. The hand is going to be at my left, the head is going to be to the right of the hand, and this foot is going to be way back there, and this elbow is going to be to the right. We could just do the things you do with orthos where we run vertical lines down and we'd know where things were, and my stars and garters, it works. Now, we'd have a lot of deducing to do if we only had a top view, but of course we're figuring. If we've got the front view, what would it look like if we were over here 90 degrees at this right side? Now, I'm not going to show you the 3D position. I'm going to show you the logic. The logic is that this model's right rear leg will be at our right. And this model's raised hand will be at our left. And if we're sitting far enough back and we've drawn this, we could run horizontal lines around and we could not only know things are at the left and right a certain amount, we could also make some cross angles and find out how high they are. Watch. Lo and behold, although it doesn't line up horizontally in this case, but if I were to shift it down, then it would. Hey, sure enough, the raised hand is at the viewer looking down, top left. There we are. And the back foot is at our right. Okay. Hey, what if we were 90 degrees the other way? Let's before we see what it looks like, let's imagine we're over here. The hind foot now, instead of being at our right, will be at our left. Is that the case? Sure enough. And it will be the close foot. The model's right leg will be the one close to us. Over here, it's the model's left leg, which is hidden there, which is close to us. Okay, let us move to a review of various skills. Let's see what we have studied. We have studied quantifiable skills, like how to precisely place blocks and positions. Is it a quantifiable skill that we have talked about making them flow or look graceful? A little bit, because some lines flow and look graceful. How about strong or pitiful or saucy? Ooh. We're moving away from quantifiable skills. We're moving away from measurable skills. We're moving toward this thing called gesture that has more than one meaning. But I have hoped to define gesture in a way that includes various meanings, which has a few categories. Well, first of all, let's make a list here. The control of spatial positions using blocks is not gesture. That's what we call drafting. That's the technical side of drawing. However, when we get to empathy, when we get to feeling the model's feelings, that's less technical. It's more emotional. Where do we go from there? Animation. Physical movement and forces. Yeah, we spent some time 2 days ago and yesterday about what happens when something moves. Now, there is something that all three of these has in common. All three of these have to do with the body, with the human figure. The point that I made yesterday for about 10 or 15 minutes is that there's a whole other skill, not about the body, but about the design of the picture, the pleasing pattern, as we may call it. We don't want to say the graceful pattern, because you may not be interested in making graceful compositions. But we can say the pleasing pattern, because even if it's a frightening pattern, a disturbing pattern, you say disturbing is anything but pleasing, and I want to do horror images that are really frightening. Still, that's aesthetic emotion is the term that the experts call that. That's where you sit down to be scared or disturbed by something, but it's voluntary, and it's like the pain of good exercise that you're taking on. Okay, what have we got here? 4 various skills. There are many more, many more. The whole book has 3, the section on rhythm in the complete guide on page 32 and in Life Drawing on page 34 through 5 has 3 paragraphs. I'm going to sum them up. I think I can do it in 2 minutes. Here's the sum up. Rhythm was not invented. It was discovered. It was there before us. Doubtless it will be there after us, and maybe we are part of it. We don't want to analyze rhythm so much as we want to feel it. I remember watching a baby, not a small child, a baby, bounce his body in response to a Haydn symphony, which was very funny, and the baby didn't have any idea what the word rhythm meant. The baby just felt the rhythm. So, the first paragraph in Bridgman's book on rhythm just tells us that rhythm is everywhere. Animals sleep and wake. Plants bear fruit and go dormant. They have roots that go down and branches that go up. They breathe in and breathe out. And It's everywhere, and he specifies 3 things that you care about in his figure drawing. One is outlines can have rhythm. He also mentions color and light and shade. Well, we're going to get to light and shade. Let me show you. Light and shade will be next week. We're going to begin next week with light and shade, and we're going to mainly talk about the logic of light and shade. But we're also going to talk about a bit about the rhythm of light and shade. Okay, now, there are many more things about rhythm than those 3 things. Paragraph 2 is very short. It tells us that how great movies are. We already talked about that we can analyze rhythm by watching movies. And paragraph 3 is also short. It tells us here, this is important. This is what we're moving into next. Paragraph 3 in Bridgman's book on rhythm tells us that to express rhythm, we take these 3 parts of the body, head, thorax, and pelvis, and we move back and forth from active to passive sides. We notice it, we accentuate it, and we don't want to forget that it's happening all over the body. And it's worth looking for to make the body feel like a live, fleshy, rhythmic body. He ends by saying we should keep in mind constantly, quote, the hidden, subtle flow of symmetry throughout. Hidden? Yes. People don't consciously look at a body and say active and inactive side, or outlines curve this way and outlines curve that way. Artists do, because it will be felt by a worthy viewer. Artists work on this as a favor to a worthy viewer. Okay, here's something that came up in yesterday's crit session. There is a rhythm to training. There is a rhythm to your homework. If your homework is being done indoors, you may want to go outdoors, for example. If you're working by artificial light, you may need natural light. If you do your homework standing, you may want to sit to read, and vice versa. But the big thing that's important for the quality of your training and getting the best out of you, which is why you're here, is to train 2 different skills. And I showed you this yesterday, but I'm showing you it again because that's what came up. Look what Romana is working on. Tight and loose. Constrained and free. Opposite skills. And the best thing about this slide to me is not the wonderful line quality in the ink versions. It's the fact that it's done by an artist who also is very concerned about the positions of these big portions. This is an artist who is working not only the dominant arm, but both arms together. This one from yesterday's homework session, day before yesterday's homework session, this one had something in the comment that I failed to read and found out when we got into the crit session. Phoenix says that these bottom ones, look how gestural that is. As a figure, it's someone who's so wildly dancing that they're worth putting in front of a camera, or they're worth drawing. It's also a little jazz improv of lines. But did you know that they were based? These bottom ones were based on this. Wow, it thrills my heart to know that that kind of meticulous care can give permission to this kind of reverie. Yes. And if you've got a page of all reverie, to have reverie that is shapes and other reverie that is contours, that's 2 kinds of skills. In fact, if I didn't know Luca, I would just look at this immediately and say, this is a type of student whom a teacher can learn to get out of the way of. And eventually you'll see a player Good work, Luca. Okay, the balance we've got between Bridgman's Complete Guide to Drawing from Life and Nicolaides' The Natural Way to Draw. We're going to actually do our first sets of drawings. Flash poses. Nicolaides exercise number 5, adapted by Marshall Vandruff. It's a 1-second pose and a 1-minute drawing. You will be forced to see the whole pose as a unit because there's not enough time to see more. Yeah. The model rushes to the stand, strikes a single action pose in a flash of a second, then leaves the stand as quickly as possible. The action should be simple, such as putting a hand to the forehead or raising an arm. In the short space of 1 minute, draw a flash scribble drawing recording only your basic reaction. Now, this is a gesture drawing. One of the things he is trying to do, that he will continue to do in this book, is to get you not thinking. Of course, when you're doing the right angle study, lots of thinking. This is one of the ones that says, don't think, just respond. Now, I am going to put up a slide I'm going to be generous. I'm going to give you 2 seconds. Second and a half. It's going to be 2 characters. You can choose one. One will be at the left, one will be at the right. That way, those of you who say, Marshall, I'm tired of being around these simple projects. I've done this before. You get 2 characters. If you're new to it, 1. Don't draw when I flash it up here on the screen, but be poised, and we'll time us at 1 minute to do this. Let's look at the pose. 1, 1, thou. Okay, draw. Time is up, dear students. Look at your drawing before we look at the impulse for it. 2 questions you're going to ask, and they're opposite kinds of questions. One is, did my angles get anywhere close? And if you look at what you drew and your angles are nowhere close, it's okay. That wasn't the job. There comes a point where you say, I don't care about the angles. Now, here's the second question. This is the more important question. When I did this, did I feel that the pressure was on that foot? And did I feel a sense of scrunch in my right hip joint, anteriorly speaking? Did I feel the stretch that from all of this sitting in my chair at the computer pulled on that iliotibial band and that gracilis muscle and all that stuff in there? Did I feel this foot drag? Did I feel a sense that I have lunged forward, and did I sense that I'd spread my hand out? Maybe not. That might be too much. But that's the kind of thing that in a second, the sympathetic vibration of that character, or this character who's in a very vulnerable position, if these were real weapons, to have your chest open like that to somebody, did you feel that when you did it? Did you have an impulse to close down or turn away or anything else? These are the more important concerns than did I get the angle right? We're going to do another here. I just did what I felt of a man being stabbed in the eye. I did like an eyeball with a bunch of blood coming out of it, and that's one way to feel. But we're trying to get figure drawings, even if they're little ciphers, even if they're little things that go like this. Because that, even though that is not proportionally the thing, it's the thing that gets us started. And then when I look at it, what would be the next thing? Not the angle, but watch this. If I really have put my energy into thrusting, graceful lines are graceful lines. They give you a sense that we're on a little journey and we're taking our time. But as soon as you say, I have no time, I go straight for it, it's a different feeling. And this is not hesitating. This is thrusting. So straight lines become here quite related to what's going on. Now that we have more than photographs, now that we have computer graphics where you can put little dots on landmark points and analyze the motion, and your coach can watch the video of you on the field with this analysis and see how to do better. Okay, we're going to do another one. Prepare yourself. It'll be two pictures, one on the left, one on the right. I think I'm not going to tell you which one to choose, but you've seen these pictures before. Poise yourself. Don't draw when you see it. Wait until I say go. On your mark. Prepare to look. We'll look for 1.5 seconds. And we have done so. Now, 1 minute to draw. Timer's going. Look at your drawing before we look back at it. And let's think. You responded to that fast of an image of a woman from a previous century who was not thinking about you. She was thinking about this piece of drapery. She had sensations in her body as she was doing it of lifting up and then pulling down. And that piece of drapery, if you got the piece of drapery all wrong in its position, but watch this, if she were pulling that piece of drapery down there, she isn't. I think that's 6 and that's 7. She's actually lifting it up. She's pushing it this way. And so when she goes that way, this part drags the other way. But let's imagine she was pulling it down. What would happen? Wouldn't this sweep over like that? What if you got it wrong? Technically, great if you were thinking about the feeling. Now, she has shoes on that lift her up a little bit. She's got both feet planted on the ground. She's leaning forward. That means that there are back muscles that we're going to study today. And the gluteus maximus in there, which we will study later when we get to the hip joint, those are pulling this way, or actually bracing this way, because she is leaning down. She doesn't want to fall all the way down, so she's going to have muscles in there that kick in without conscious thought. Hey, that's what Nicolaides is getting at. To do this without conscious thought, to do it with sensation. Oh, Dash, you didn't see the shoes? You had her on her toes? That's great. John says, I'm bad at this. Yeah. I want to see if I can encourage you by making fun of you. The child who says, I tried walking about 20 times, and I kept falling over. I suck at this. Let's prepare. This will be our last one. 1.5 seconds. I'll give you a hint. The one on the right is simpler. So if you're having a hard time, John, look to the right of the screen. But if you're saying, I rock at this, give me one that's tough. Give me a crowd scene. No, I'm not going to give you a crowd scene. I'm going to give you, the one on the left will be tougher. Now you know where to look on the screen. Let us click the button, and for 1,000, 2 1,000. Okay, go for it. It's sensation. Feel it in your body, and put some lines down. Is there a way to practice this on your own? There sure is. How? Practice it on your own. Get some pictures and look at them for 1 second, and then give yourself 1 minute to draw. It's all there. Hey, if you were training your eye to see things, angles, for example, you would care that that is a 70 degree angle. I think if you put the protractor on there, I wouldn't be more than 3 or 4 degrees off. I might be wrong, though. You can test me. That's if you were training your eye. That's important for training your eye to see things and measure. It's irrelevant to gesture drawing. The thing that's relevant to gesture drawing is he pushing that thing down or pulling it up? And if he is pulling it up, he's not pulling it up against anything unless it's stuck in there. And if it's stuck in there, he's really going to pull on some muscles. But if it's not stuck in there, he's just going to pull enough. But if he's pushing it down, you know what's going to happen. He is going to pull on trunk muscles here that will pull him this direction. And he's going to let go of muscles here so that he can get his weight into it as he pushes down on that. He's going to keep that bicep and that brachialis inside that arm pulled tight so that the arm doesn't straighten out. He's going to relax the tricep or just brace it so that this will stay hard and push down in there. Oh, that's going to be important as you learn anatomy. If you're studying Bridgman, Bridgman is one of the ones that makes a big deal out of this. Nicolaides is one of the ones that makes a big deal out of this. Leonardo made a dig at Michelangelo, I think it was. Not by name, but I think everybody, one of my teachers told me everybody knew what he was talking about. People have really made fun of Rubens, Rubens, Peter Paul Rubens for this, is to just fill every muscle, make every muscle swell, because they're all there. But Da Vinci was concerned that you have an active and a passive side, can give it realism. Bridgman's going to point us in this direction. What are these muscles doing it? We can't know when we don't know that the muscles exist. So what are we doing? We're at least trying to do the thing we did as children. We did not know that vocal cords existed. We did not know about glottal articulation. We did not know about breathing from the diaphragm. We did not know how to pronounce words. Didn't keep us from talking. The natural way to learn to speak is to have at it with the rhythms and the attempts, with the feelings and the sensations. I am not around small children anymore, which is probably to my benefit, just for the ease of life. But one of the most entertaining things is to watch all of that stuff happen with a person who has no fear of trying one thing or another. That's what we're doing in here. Get into the sensation. Okay, let's go back to what this was. This is one of the exercises for tonight. I'm going to give you 2 exercises. The homework that was done in the last 20 hours Instead of drawing the pose you see, draw what you think the model may do next. The effort to realize how the model could move will help you to understand the forces at work behind the action you see. I turned it into this: anticipate the pose and torso twists. Not many people did torso twists, but Phoenix took 3 of his most successful imagined gestures from the previous assignment and considered what they were doing and the poses that would come just before and just after. This resulted in a starting walk with a turn, getting up from kneeling to stretch, and a big anticipation, that's an animator's term, that if you're going to punch forward, you pull back, that if you're going to leap back, you lean forward first. That's the way we rebound things. That if you want to bounce a ball up into the sky, you could throw it up into the sky, or you could smash it down as hard as you can onto the concrete and it'll bounce up. Animators love that. It animates. It makes it come alive. Only reference, aside from the original boxes, was me taking the poses to see what led to me getting into and out of them. This is the idea. Now, if you say, I can't do that, Phoenix has been studying for a while. Few years, but you get there. Luca, you are back to your shenanigans. You are messing around. You're not crazy about these for the lack of draftsmanship, but you feel like you really know these poses now, and making messes is fun. Go play. Go play. Go play baseball. I've got other things to do. We're going to hear about you in the papers when you get into the big leagues. Etienne. Potential pose. Shots from 7 Samurai. From Kurosawa movies. Great! We have the privilege that they didn't have at the Art Students League. Learn to see the pose and anticipate the next one. Learn to think like an animator. Blue dots from reference. Red magenta dots, next pose from imagination. Good show, Brendan. And gestural, not overthought. Not trying to make a perfectly drawn figure, but trying to get the pose. You look at any of these magenta dots. Look at this one. This is from imagination. This is from imagination. This is from... Any one of these could be turned into a champion piece if you say, all right, let's get to work on it. We got the idea for the song. Now let's arrange it, orchestrate it, get the vocals in there, make it all precise. Clarita. 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 Great page documenting your studies. Torso twists. I ran out of time and space, and I regret this because I still can't draw the egg shape. I think I need to practice and study more about the forms of the torso. You're going to get to do that today and in the next few days. It's part of the assignment. It's not just that flash pose. I've got another part coming up. Lily Penelope Watson. I tried to guess what the next pose would be and was way off. Lily Penelope Watson. Look at this. Look up here. The effort to realize will help you to understand the forces at work behind the action you see. Lily. Chastise not yourself. Rejoice that you have gotten through some pain. Danielle, doing the roller skaters was challenging because I had to think about the slip on their feet and how that momentum changes the next position, but I did. Because it was so hard, you took on the challenge. Romana, after yesterday's session, I started to take snapshots of movie scenes, and I did 380 reference images. Yeah, you've got enough to keep you busy for a while. Sudipta, I listened to your feedback yesterday. I focused on quick gesture and movement for this assignment. I studied poses from UFC boxers, figure skaters, and people who do I don't know what that is. Parkour. I tried to act out some of them as well, but I noticed I was using the S curves and C curves and the straights naturally where I put them and felt my eye-hand coordination has improved a lot. Hey, a few teachers turn the curves into just a few letter forms, C being one of them, S being another one. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of simplifying. If you want to get to know a particular animal's anatomy, take an animal and do an alphabet with it. If you use the English alphabet and you go from A to Z and you have to pose an animal in that position for each letter of the alphabet, it can really stretch your mind of the different parts. And it makes you sensitive to these things, to these parts. Wrong. Don't try to think like an in-betweener, or do. Jonathan, why not? Until you say, I don't really want to do the in-betweening. I want to do the extremes. I can't tell you that it's wrong to do the in-between. Doing the in-betweens is very good for technical understanding. You learn how to in-between. Wrong, because I drew it as if the force is directed toward the front. Now you're onto something wrong that can do some good. Let's take a moment with this. Let's say something. When I have a remarkable student who did so much sketching in his book and did people in action all the time, and when we watched some of them, I could tell something was wrong. When we watched Richard Williams, and he showed us how in movement, when one limb, upper limb, is forward, if a person's moving, the other limb on that same side, the lower limb, will be in the opposite position. So if this leg is coming forward toward us to land on the ground, and we'd see underneath that foot, there's a good chance that other arm is going to be back there on the other side. We might see the fist right there. And this student had so often done people running where he would have a fist like that and the upper leg like this. Now, can that happen? It can certainly happen. It's an amusing kind of run. It's like a skip. So you can do either. But when you say, I drew it as if the force is directed from the front, you saw that there was a discrepancy between what you were drawing and what you were intending to draw. Every struggle that you start to say, I know what I did wrong, even if it wasn't necessarily wrong, and I know what to do next. And Olivia, let's see, I tried to do the anticipate the pose assignment, but I found that I really struggle with the gesture, so I decided to spend most of my time working on gesture. I hope this was okay. Olivia, you are in big trouble. No, it's okay. If you need to work on gesture, you work on gesture. Those are nice gestures. If I was going to give you any suggestion, one thing you could do is see if you can reduce, in your first lines, reduce them to single lines. Animators carry that. You might not be able to. You might say it's going to have to be a line like this and a line like that, but that's okay. Fewer lines, this all the way like that. You say, now, am I supposed to do that every time? No. We're trying to reduce. This one might be a single line because the weight goes there. But you might say, yeah, but it just doesn't feel fit for this piece. Hey, then how about this? A line like that and a line like that. Yeah, but it isn't really what's happening with the weight. Well, then how about this? A line like this and a line like that. Yeah, but however many times you want to try it, the purpose is to simplify, but these are very good. Okay, this week, a second and a minute. 20 minutes a day. for the next 4 or 5 days, it's probably going to do something in the synapses in your brain to make you a better gestural observer. Let's get to the anatomy stuff. We'll take about a half hour on anatomy, maybe 40 minutes, and then 20 minutes or so on metaphors from nature. Torso wedges. On redrawings or overlays of your favorite box torsos, according to your ability, link the masses with a string, a strip of tape, or a wedged form. Here's what we've learned. So far, we've had a lot of time devoted to the fact that inside that thorax, inside that upper torso, there is a something that is roundish. And inside this entire pelvic block, there is a something that is blockish. And you could just hardly overemphasize that, considering how Bridgman has emphasized it. That inside there is this, and inside there is this. But we haven't talked much about how they connect. And they connect. He even said, don't worry about how they connect. Just make them float. If you're going to connect anything, maybe a little line back here for the spine. But at some point, we need to move on. Oh, these really are, by the way. Let's just get a little preview of what we're going to do. Do you feel how Bridgman feels? That back, if he were to put a cross contour on it, would go like that. And if light were coming from this way, he might put some shade on that part, and he might shade this part like that. The thickness is there. And then, even though it may cast a shadow over there, that may cast a shadow that could crawl around all the way around to the other side. This part's going to be in light. Now watch this. We'll get to this when we get to the hip joint. That part's going to be in shadow. Look at how a few little bits of rendering start to create the illusion of three-dimensionality. How do we know where to put that shading? We're going to study in the next few minutes here. We're going to study the fact that there is a muscle there that sits on top of the surface. And if the light's coming from that way, it's going to catch little bits of shade. And then this is going to catch little bits of shade. And notice that I'm putting shade on parts that I'm not arbitrarily putting it there. I'm knowing that those are planes that would face away from the light. Here we go. Because I'm going to take 10 minutes, maybe 15, with giving you the names of the connecting parts. On your anterior side, the front of your chest, there is a muscle that grips. It grips into this cartilage. It grips there, and it goes all the way down to this very important joining together of the pelvis at the groin. Genitalia will be below that. And this muscles only pull. So when this muscle goes from that groin to that chest, bilaterally symmetrical, divided into parts. How many? Depends, but typically 3, a 6-pack. What's that muscle called? Anybody know? Rectus abdominis. Rectus means straight. It is the straight muscle of the abdomen. Well, it isn't really straight. If we go over here, we're going to see that it goes like this. Hey, everybody, look how that line alone starts to make this figure look fleshed. Isn't that incredible? A few little lines of muscle. and it starts to look human. I love it. Okay, that muscle will go from the abdomen to the symphysis pubis. Whether you get pregnant, gain weight, if you gain weight and it's fat, it will start to overlap another section, but it will always go from there to there. That's the rectus abdominis, front muscle. What does it do, by the way? It crunches the body when you do sit-ups. It brings this part of the body, by gripping there, and this part of the body closer together. So it says, I will lift you up to there as much as I can, and it will crunch those muscles and make those fibers stronger. Okay, let's go to the next set. On the back, you have a group, and it is a group. There's a longissimus dorsi and a multifidus and there's I think 3 or 4 of them in there that you could study, but we're not going to study them individually. They go from the sacrum into, there's a quadratus in there, into the spine, into the rib cage and spine, and they become a couple of columns. In fact, it is right here. Let me erase that. It is right here that you get 2 big tubes. They start to splay out. And that group, anyone know what that group is called that goes from the sacrum primarily into the spine? On a human, erector spinae, because it holds the spine erect. On an animal, and on a human too, we call it the sacrospinalis. These are thick, by the way. What does it do? It holds the spine erect. It does the opposite of the one that pulls us together. It pulls us together. This one pulls this way to hold the rib cage up. Those are 2 opposite muscles. One to flex our body, one to extend our body. All right, is there another set? We got rectus abdominis, erector spinae, or sacrospinalis. One more. On the side, there's a group of 8 fingers that will go down into and lay over the pelvic crest. Anyone know what that one's called? No, it's not the serratus. The serratus go from underneath that shoulder blade into there and interdigitate with it. The external oblique. Why external? Because it's on the outside. What's that mean? It means there's another one on the inside. Watch this. There's another set on the inside that goes the opposite way, and on humans we don't study it. On animals we do. And because it goes this way, the fibers go that way, what do they do when they pull? If they grip here and they pull this way, what do? They spin. They're pulling from here and they're pulling this way to spin around, you see. They will spin it on the y-axis so that this side will come forward. Okay. They will also pull this way to lean that way, but they don't need to. They don't need too much. They do a little bit, but gravity takes care of that most. But if you lie down on your side, and you lift this part of your body, you will be pulling with the external obliques to strengthen them. And twisting does it too. The ones underneath the internal do the opposite twist. Now, what have we got? 3 sets. One set goes from the chest to the groin. One set goes from the pelvis to the spine. There's 2 in there, but the one on the outside that we care about will go this way, externally and oblique. And the other ones will go the other way, and they have actually more than one function. All right, now let's take a look at them. First, let's look at the flesh. Hey, I bet you that with all of this gradual connection into that cartilage and that aponeurosis, that flattened out tendon, that is aiming right down to there and up to there. And there may be 3 and there may be 4, and on some people they're not even symmetrical. Little things like that, and then by the time we get down to here, there's not a ridge between them. There'll be a ridge between those lumps. That is, I'm going to take the slides away, and let me go to a smaller line width. That is the rectus abdominis. Over here, see, it's got muscle and tendon that makes those little ridges if you are tightly cut, and it's aiming down to there. It stretches from abdomen to groin. It pulls and helps you do a sit-up. All right, what else have we got? We've got a group of muscles that comes from the shoulder blade, a group of fingers that are all the same muscle, that come from underneath that shoulder blade that will pull the shoulder blade forward. And they interdigitate with the fingers of the external oblique, which, do you see that little angle there and that angle there? That is actually oblique. And so it's going to go this way, it's going to pull and either spin this guy around, or if you were carrying a heavy weight, great big heavy weight here, you would not only be holding that with your arm, you would also be holding, this would want to go down, so this would say, no, I won't let you go down, and it would pull the other way, and you'd be tightening both the external oblique and the internal oblique inside there. But it's what makes that flank on the side. And you see that on the front, watch this dot, watch this line. This is an important line. Do you see how the rectus abdominis is 3-dimensional? We're looking down on it. What if we were looking up at it? Watch this line. If our eye was down here, we would go up as we run the rubber band. Why? Because that's now an egg with this end closer to us. Whereas before, I was thinking of it as an egg with this end closer to us, and so I was reversing the curve. Now that's going to be useful for putting that muscle in there. How about this sacrum? The triangle on that sacrum. The whole sacrum goes down in there further, but it tucks underneath. In fact, watch over here. Look over here. Do you see how that sacrum goes inside? It's actually tucking underneath there, and the flesh goes over the top of it. So the parts of the sacrum that you can tap under the skin, the subcutaneous parts, are this arrowhead right there, not the entire sacrum. But this is a complex group of muscles that is arranging itself here, and wow, I don't see it as an individual muscle. Okay, dear students, this is a tough one. There is a muscle that starts all the way down here, and it goes here, and it goes all the way up into there. Anyone know what that muscle is? It's even got a little part that tugs off of there. That is the latissimus dorsi. The latissimus dorsi is purely and entirely an arm muscle. It does nothing but, that's its job, is to pull the arm back. So when you do pull-ups, that will grow. When you swim and you go like that a lot, it'll make you grow. And it's anchored all the way back here. And it sits on top So it's the one that everybody knows the name. But it is underneath there that we care, because you will often get, watch this, you'll often get a little sliver right there, which is partly from the latissimus dorsi, and partly from the fact, watch this, watch my lines, as I go like this, that sacrospinalis group makes a couple of pillars. And particularly on a woman, because on a woman, this group of muscles back here tends to get grouped with the buttocks, not with the back. And so we may very well be looking up like that, and we'll have that those couple of swells of that group of the sacrospinalis muscles. Now, let's take a look at pure muscles. Ooh, this is how not to study anatomy. This one on the right in particular. Because if you study anatomy and you get so enamored with that, because the difference in the color between the light part, which is aponeurosis, that's flattened out tendinous portions, and the fibers, which are darker, and you memorize that diamond, it's going to throw you off. It's not the form. It's not the more important thing. It is more important up here, actually, that if that diamond, which is like a water droplet, because that's a plateau that's got a bump on it that sticks out. Let me erase what I did and look at how the shading, if the lighting is coming from above this way, look at how you get a little shade there, because that tendinous portion doesn't grow, whereas this stuff swells out around it. But on the back, forget about this. Forget about this, at least to start. On the front, wow, what's going on there? Here's what's going on. I'll take 30 seconds to explain this. The rectus abdominis is not right under the skin. It's like a knife in a sheath of flattened out tendinous material, aponeurosis, and it moves inside there. He's showing us that. What's more important? The more important thing is to find a way to depict these muscles as simple, memorizable, drawable things that eventually will become forms. You have access. The free version of the Proco course offers you 100 times more for no money, the free version, for all of this, where he takes you through every bit of it. But the reason I'm taking the time to do this is to orient us. To just remind us, we got 3 sets. Each one pulls. They pull against each other. They pull against gravity. And we want to simplify enough, because you're not going to do anatomy studies this week. What is the job this week? On redrawings or overlays of your favorite boxed torsos. If you're advanced, beach balls and eggs. But in your learning, boxed. According to your ability, you may not be able to do this, but you can at least link them with a string. I'm going to show you how to link them with a strip of tape and a wedged form in a moment here. This is what you've got, you see. Now, you've got, if that rib cage is in a position like this, and we see more of this side than that side, and this is all lined up with it, and we're aiming for right there. And we've got a belly. Now, I know this person's really tall and stretched out, but let's say they've actually got a belly. Put a nice little belly button in there. Hey, we linked it with a piece of string. That's a start. What we might do, I'm not even going to twist this. I'm going to say, what if it was thick? If it was thick, since it's at my right, I think I would see more of that part at my left than I would the part at my right. My golly, I did it. I can see a plane. That is going to take you somewhere. Now I'm looking up at this one, see? That line is going like it's curving the other way. But I'm on my way. What am I going to do with that external oblique? Well, I know that it comes from somewhere on that. It's not important where. The important thing is that if it were a string, it would go down to that iliac crest. But I think I remember it being shaped sort of like a teardrop. Now watch this. I'm looking down at this block. So I'm pretty safe in saying that does it. That made it look thick. And then I've got that great big linea alba. I've got that great big area that's no man's land. Hey, what about the other side? If I went over there, it can't come out here. It's got to land somewhere on there. I'm starting to get something anatomical. It's starting to look three-dimensional. That's going to be a football that goes into there. That's going to be a buttock that goes into there, and we'll lose all those parts we don't. We're going to do the same thing with the neck muscle that goes from behind the ear. We're going to do the same thing with a funnel that will go in there for that throat, and that might make an Adam's apple before it goes down, and all sorts of other things. But if you are having a hard time, just use the piece of tape. Or excuse me, just use the string. Now, look at what he's done here. He has showed us that he's thinking of a piece of string. He said that goes from the base of the sternum, and then it goes, oh, you wimped out. No, he didn't wimp out. It's probably that these were done in really detailed charcoal, and the reproduction just fades out the light parts. But what's he doing? Now he's doing more than what we did over here. See, this was easy. That went straight down. No, it didn't go straight down. It didn't go straight down because we know that a belly tends to stick out. And we can even get more sophisticated and say bellies don't stick out all the same. They tend to go teardrop shaped because gravity affects them. Okay, what about when they aren't lined up straight? If he were to put in the other string, that one's going to go to where? Down to here. Do you see how? Watch this, everybody. If you are drawing right now, you're going to miss an important thing. That part's closer to me, so that means this curves this way if it's a convex form, and most parts of the body are. Whereas this one curves the other way, and so the curve, if it's convex like that, and so that will make an S curve that not only can look beautiful, it also is a, human bodies. It's also a graphic design line. A graphic design line. Oh, these aren't that great to study this from because there's not enough information there. Can you give us a better one? Well, this one was the one that somebody asked. Isn't that impossible? Yeah, look at how far over that is, and it went that far over there. It's a beautiful line, but look at how much he's leaving out. We've got to know anatomy, even more anatomy that I'm giving you, but he's at least getting us started here. That's a center line, and then there's an arrowhead in there. I gave you some page numbers here. The complete guide, 5th edition, pages 4 through 5, 18. Vera will have all of this to post. Here's one that gives us something. This is telling us that he is thinking this way. A string is enough to get started. But then eventually, we may want something that is a thick thing. That should have curved. That should be like that. And then we're going to, if we've got to know where we're aiming, we're going to aim down to something three-dimensional down there. And we'll say it's going to go to that point there. Watch what I do. That would be the piece of tape. And then if we make it really thick tape. We'll put a side on it, and we'll make a cross contour and a cross contour. Now we've gone from a string to something thicker. There is a slide, I don't know what page that's on, but that's in the Bridgman book. He is exaggerating this to the point of absurdity. Let's do it. I'm going to put it out here. Now this is the last one I'm going to do of the rectus abdominis, because I want to show you what happens here. We now have this side closer, and so if this is a thick thing, this rectus abdominis, we're going to see this side of it. But we changed the rules. Now, when it gets down here, we're going to see this side of it and not the other. We have taken a piece of tape and we've said up here, it tucks behind that, down here, it comes out from underneath it. And then to look at this edge and repeat that cross contour, to look at that edge and repeat that cross contour, and then say, what's going to happen in here? Somewhere in there, there's going to be a line that would go straight across. We would tend to avoid that. This is going to get maybe a little less severe, and we pay attention to how these axes go. But that is the facing this way and the facing this way that would happen on that chest, just now on an organic form. Does Bridgman have a pedagogical purpose with this exaggeration, or just something about his style and design? He has a pedagogical purpose. If you don't know what pedagogical means, it means a teaching purpose. Yes, when you exaggerate things, you make them clear. Let's take that hind quarter. Hey, what's he doing here? He's telling us that that leg down there is going away from us, and this leg here is coming toward us. But let's just do this great big plane of the buttocks. And there's that triangle maybe somewhere on there. And watch this. Look what's happening over here. He's saying that on that buttock is a thing like this. Now watch. Since I see a little more of this side than that side, there's a good chance I'm going to see more of this plane than the other plane. And if this person is leaning over there, I'm going to continue to see that. And this one, that center line would go like this, and we'd start to lose what's over there. So we would have a three-dimensional thing. It could be going down while this is going up. The idea, as you look through Bridgman's book and see what he's doing, he says, center line, piece of string. Can you thicken it? Watch this, everybody. This will be the last one we do, because otherwise we're going to run out of time. I'm going to do that pelvic block from the side, and we're going to do this upper torso. And then we're going to say, what do we do after we've done the piece of string? This area on here, find a center line. This area on here may so conform to that block that when we put rubber bands around it, they will go away from us. Those two tubes that are sort of melded together will be going away from us. Rubber bands will go like that. Sorry, I can't erase. And then look what happens. They start to switch direction, and this set of tubes here starts to give us the crunch where one set meets another set, and we get that squash that happens on the back. He's turning it into something that fans out like that. He doesn't have specific exaggerations like what I'm doing over here. This should have a plane over there to make the point better. And this should have a plane over here to make the point better. And now I can take my rubber bands and go like that. Now I know that's crudely drawn, but it does make the point that we've got exaggerated synthetic forms that represent one muscle or another inserting itself into these body parts. Let's look for it on a photograph. It's harder to see on a photograph. Harder to see there. Hey, look at this. But you see this? That's because the light is coming this way, and we've got some thickness to that. Let's take a look at the guy who throws the punch on the back. Oh, yeah. That's what Bridgman is exaggerating right there. And there's that center line. Bridgman's pedagogical purpose. It's easier to dial back something that's exaggerated than to amplify something you never even understood. It's easier to, once you understand how to pronounce a word, whisper it, than to not know how to pronounce a word and try to shout it. Keisha asks, if we had to pick one book to start studying anatomy between Goldfinger's and Richet's, which one would you recommend? I wouldn't start with either of them. You haven't read my reviews? They're too complicated. They're too technical. Start with David Rubin's, the RUBIN. You go to my website. Just go to the front page, and it'll have a recommendations one. And read all that stuff. I've spent quite a bit of time putting my opinions about the books into that, and that will answer those questions for you. Okay. We're shifting gears majorly. I'm going to show you one portion of observations. The key to the nature of a subject is its gesture. Okay, that again. All right. From it, the other aspects of drawing proceed. He said that's the most important thing. We say that we felt as limp as a dish rag, that he sat as stiff as a poker. That quality which makes you compare the way a man sits to a poker may give you some clue to the gesture of both the pose and the object. By using your feeling or imagination, like a 3-year-old, you can relate the gestures you see to those which are more universally understood. For example, the base of a lamp may have a sturdy, smug look which suggests to you a well-fed, prosperous businessman with a neat collar holding his head straight up. Here's Kimon Nicolaides' pitch. Listen to this. Such observation is more instructive as well as more interesting than an observation of static lines and planes. And it results in a kind of knowledge that can be recalled 10 years from now, even though you've forgotten all about the act of observing. Let's go to another set of observations. I'm going to leave this page up for 5 minutes. There is a whole lot in this set of paragraphs. Water trees, and fireworks. Now, I'm going to give you a picture to look at in case it makes you feel better to have something on the screen to draw. And I'm going to keep talking. If you think that because Nicolaides said that a tree grows upward from the ground, that the only way to draw a tree is from the base up, you don't get it. You don't get what he's getting at. You know, there's a whole opposite way that you may have discovered trees. When you were a child, you may have found a leaf in a bushy area, and you followed that leaf, and then that went to the thin branches, and then that went to bigger branches, and then all of a sudden it went into the ground, and you couldn't go any further. You can draw a tree any way you want. But what he's saying is that since trees grow out of the ground, we might want to give some thought and feeling to that. We might want to practice that. Trees and how they grow and how they have rhythm, as he talked about in the book. Trees have rhythm in the way the breeze blows and the way they rebound. Trees can be likened to human bodies. Thinking about trees when we draw trees is pretty prosaic, but here's my point. Thinking about trees when you draw people, that can be interesting. My teacher said that when you draw people, you should be thinking about trees. No. If that's what's going on in your mind, you don't get it. Thinking about flames when you draw people will give them a different feeling. Michelangelo consciously chose this, that the flame whips this way and then another way and then a third way, and he consciously chose that as a metaphor for how to treat the body. Another person can say the body meanders like that, but I'm not thinking of fire, I'm thinking of streams. Another person says, I don't want my body to meander. I want it to be hard-hitting and forceful, and they're thinking about fire hoses or geysers. Another person says, I want this person to seem elegant and kind of like a snake. And whatever you choose, it is a way to not simply copy Bridgman, but to find the inspirations that you want to treat human bodies like. Trees are magical. Trees are marvelous. Trees can take you a long way, but it's not a prescription. I would say this, though, to make it practical. If you love trees, I have not loved trees and plants in my life, but in the last few years and in the last few months, I'm going crazy for them because I'm eating the fruit off of some of them, and I'm starting to think about them, and I want to live another 100 years so that I can indulge in trees and learn about them and look at them. And I think I'm not alone in that. But another person says, have you seen those YouTube videos of slow motion photography of fire tornadoes? Aren't those the most awesome things? And another person will say the way smoke billows out of volcanoes and out of those old locomotive steam engines, I can just look at that stuff. And another person says, I like that too, but I like clouds, and I like the different kinds of clouds. We are living in a world of powers that we did not invent, that are bigger than us, and that if we use those as our inspiration, you see, we could be inspired by Arthur Rackham as an artist, but Arthur Rackham as an artist, if you look at his legs and you look at his arms and you see how beautifully anatomical they thought they are. This is around the time that Bridgman was teaching. He's British, not American. You can say, I draw arms like Arthur Rackham. Yeah, you and a lot of others. But can you tell that Rackham has got a tree-like gnarled oak? These are not fresh avocado sprouts. Those are gnarled oak. Look at how he treats anatomy. There's a tree-like quality to it. You may say, I love the water thing. But what kind of water? I think that Romana's treatment of her drawings of the figure had a quality that's like water on a window glass after the rain has stopped and you get little drips that go through. I don't see that with Bridgman. I think one of Bridgman's main ones is rock. Not concrete exactly, because usually when you cut concrete, it's more systematic, it's usually measured out precisely, but when rock falls, one side gets chipped off more than another, and so you get an asymmetry to it that has got a natural quality and a strong quality, and even the way he lights things, he tends to give it desert rock lighting with strong single source above lighting, one core shadow at the plane turning away, and really strong reflective lighting. You might, for your body, instead of choosing gnarled oaks, you might choose lilies. How do we make this practical? Go to your bookshelf. What natural phenomena do you love enough to say, I collect pictures of this stuff? I just like looking at it. I like looking at pastries and candies and food. I like looking at rotting wood. I like looking at architecture. What kind of architecture, though? Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture is very different from Gothic architecture. Go to the things that you love. Be thinking about them in this week and say, are any of these things possible influences on how I might treat the figure, view the figure, a lens through which I can see the figure, a flavor which I can give the figure, another thing that interests me that I can liken the figure to and make decisions. Bridgman chooses several throughout the book. I'm calling your attention to the fact that your work reflects nature anyway. I mentioned to you that when I spent hours drawing from a lobster and trying to understand lobsters, everything I drew, trees look like exoskeletons, human bodies look like exoskeletons. Those are ingested natural metaphors. If you copy Bridgman's style, that's not a metaphor. That's a touchstone. It's a little different. Someone's already cut this stone. It's solid. I put my foot down on it, and it gives me support to do my own thing. Another artist has already done it. A natural metaphor is going to be more like natural phenomena, that you eat of this fruit, and you breathe of this air, and you drink of this water, and that becomes a part of you. The stuff you ingest, the natural phenomena that you ingest will affect your work. Okay, I've gone over time. Sorry about that. That was about metaphors from nature. I didn't make it part of the formal homework assignment. Bridgman reminds me of Jim's. Edmund Dulac's compositions are like Jim's. Yeah, Jim's uncut and cut. Oh, this is great to see this, like Gaudi, so close to natural geometry as a I was definitely thinking flowers and Rococo furniture, clouds, Gothic architecture. We can also you can look at things that are already made by humans. John Klein is a biologist and cannot see metaphorically. He sees bones and muscles. You can see metaphorically, you do. You know how many of the bones have names like acetabulum, which means little vinegar cup? And the deltoid looks like the shape of a river delta. The sternum is named after parts of a sword, right? The malleolus looks like a hammer. That thigh is a football. I have lots of mechs and Legos on my shelves. I wonder how. Push and pull and moves. Oh gosh, you guys are running with it. Okay, thank you for sticking around 5 minutes overtime. See you next week. Enjoy your homework. So I hope you can play with it, better your skills, and see you next week. That was session 6.
Too much noise. Shut your noise, you.
That was session 6. We're halfway through our 12 sessions. If you want more videos, updates, etc., subscribe to my announcement list at martialart.com.